What is a declassified document? That is so unbelievable it sounds fake. Operation Northwoods. A plan by the US to attack its own military and civilians and blame it on Cuba to then use it as an excuse to invade Cuba. Change Cuba for another country and tell me if it sounds like a more recently conspiracy theory. Wasn't there one involving stealing a wrecked Soviet submarine in the Pacific? I feel like one of my older relatives sent me something like that as a things from my job I wasn't allowed to mention until now. From 1932 to 1972, the United States Public Health Service studied the long-term effects of syphilis on people they had intentionally infected without their knowledge. The Sigma War Game Theory. Classified war games of possible US involvement in Vietnam. Run several times over the early 1960s. The US lost almost every time. The best case scenario was where the war dragged on for several years until public opinion in the US forced them to leave. So basically the Gov was entirely aware they would likely lose a war in Vietnam, but went in anyway. They managed to pull off the best case scenario for themselves and it only cost the Vietnamese a couple million dead. Operation Mincemeat. A dead British officer washes ashore Spain during WW2 with a briefcase of top secret documents handcuffed to his wrist. Spain is neutral, but as a fascist nation, supports Germany tacitly and allows them to photograph the documents before returning them to the British, so they continue to remain neutral. The documents detail an allied plan to launch a naval invasion of Greece and attack into Germany from the soft underbelly that is the Balkans and Hungary. The Germans eat the bait, and the Axis move forces to defend against this front in Greece. However, this is where the Allies reveal their trap card and invade a much more poorly defended Sicily. The British officer was a random Welsh homeless person who had recently died, who was dressed up as a British officer, given a fully detailed set of papers and backstory, including love letters and a picture of a girlfriend, some fake papers in a briefcase, and dropped off the coast of Spain by submarine. The CIA's attempt to train cat spies. They tried to train cats to be spies by implanting recording equipment in their bodies and letting them loose near Soviet buildings. The cats could accurately travel short distances to targets, but the training didn't stick well enough for the cats to meet the CIA's eavesdropping needs. Program got shut down after a few millions of dollars worth of investment. Operation Unthinkable. At the end of Wwii, the British Armed Forces Joint Planning Staff in May 1945 submitted to Prime Minister Winston Churchill a plan where the goal was to invade the Soviet Union using ex-German troops and German industrial capacity if needed for the goal as stated. The overall or political object is to impose upon Russia the will of the United States and British Empire. The wreckage of the Titanic was found because the Navy was looking for the wreckage of 2 nuclear subs in the area. They staged the expedition as a private venture to find the Titanic to cover for the fact that they were actually looking for the submarines. They actually ended up finding all 3 wreckages, although they only reported on the Titanic at the time. There's a declassified CIA document about them interviewing people who claimed to be able to astral project themselves onto Mars into underground alien cities or something. It was very in-depth, but I can't remember what it's called. Operation Northwoods, in which the CIA wanted to do a bunch of false flag terrorism operations against the United States, which would then be used as a justification to invade Cuba. Kennedy rejected it, and by sheer coincidence, was assassinated shortly thereafter. CIA, Project Dark Gene. Americans were desperate to fly over the Soviet Union and test their air defenses, which they had not done since Gari powers were shot down, as well as gather signals information under a complementary program, Project Ibex, to allow jamming techniques to be developed. The idea is that an American pilot would be training an Iranian pilot. This was before the Iranian Revolution, in an F-4 Phantom or F-5 Tiger, and they would get lost and accidentally enter Soviet airspace. It went about as well as you can imagine, with half a dozen Iranian aircraft shot down and all crews either killed or captured. The Gay Bomb. The Gay Bomb and halitosis bomb are formal names for two non-lethal psychochemical weapons that a United States Air Force research laboratory speculated about producing. The theories involve discharging sex pheromones over enemy forces in order to make them sexually attracted to each other. In 1994, the Wright Laboratory in Ohio, a predecessor to today's United States Air Force Research Laboratory, produced a 3-page proposal on a variety of possible non-lethal chemical weapons, which was later obtained by the Sunshine Project through a Freedom of Information Act request. The CIA Assassination Manual from 1953 comes complete with diagrams about how to enter a conference room and kill everyone. The Ghost Army was a US tank brigade in Wwii. Except instead of actual tanks and soldiers, it was made up of inflatable tanks and art school students. They cruised around pretending to be an actual brigade to deceive the Axis forces. It worked. Their activities remained classified for 50 years. There's a cool documentary about it if you want to learn more and see what it looked like. Phoenix Program. Guantanamo Bay torture techniques were developed by the CIA Vietnam Phoenix program. The Guantanamo guards didn't come up with the enhanced interrogation by themselves. They were taught. Before Guantanamo Bay, the torture techniques were used in Latin America. The picture of the black hooded man, La Capuchi, standing on a boxing crucifix style with dangling wires was used in Latin America, known as La Cámara, after a captured Chilean women. Bat bombs were an experimental World War II weapon developed by the United States. The bomb consisted of a bomb-shaped casing with over 1,000 compartments, each containing a hibernating Mexican free-tailed bat with a small, timed incendiary bomb attached. Dropped from a bomber at dawn, the casings would deploy a parachute in mid-flight and open to release the bats, which would then disperse and roost in eaves and attics in a 20-40 mile radius, 32 to 64 kilometers. The incendiaries, which were set on timers, would then ignite and start fires in inaccessible places in the largely wood and paper constructions of the Japanese cities that were the weapon's intended target. The United States Navy took control in August 1943, using the codename Project X-Ray. The US scrapped the project after beginning the Manhattan Project. It's crazy that this weapon was actually developed and would have been implemented had the US not developed nuclear weapons. Operation Foxley. The Allies proposed a plot to assassinate Hitler during his morning constitutional walk at the Berghof. Although meticulously planned and researched with cooperation from a captured German soldier who served as a guard at this location, to involve a two-man sniper team with ingress and egress routes, it was never carried forward. Supposedly it was decided that by 1944 the removal of Hitler would actually make things worse for the Allies, because he would likely be replaced with a more competent commander. The whole COINTELPRO project is disturbing, but reading about how the FBI literally paid people to murder Fred Hampton is so evil that it's cartoonish. Operation Midnight Climax and George Hunter White. If I remember correctly, the basics were that the CIA in the 1950s wanted to research the possibility of using LSD for mind control. Consultant George Hunter White was given the task, so he would host dinner parties in his New York apartment and dose pitchers of martinis with LSD without the knowledge of his guests, to see what would happen. One party girl later stumbled into a hospital, not knowing what was happening to her, and understandably thought she had gone insane, attempting to have herself committed. So things got too out of hand, and the CIA decided to pull back on the operation. White, who was apparently a big fan of alcohol and narcotics himself, moved the operation to San Francisco. He would hire prostitutes to dose their clients, while he watched the events unfold behind a two-way mirror. Apparently he also sat on a toilet the entire time, because he didn't want to miss a second of what transpired. Project A119 was a top-secret study by the US government to predict the effects of detonating a nuclear warhead on the moon, big enough to be visible from Earth. They wanted to do this because they thought the Soviets would be doing something similar for the anniversary of the October Revolution. It didn't end up going ahead because the study, unsurprisingly, concluded that this was a terrible fucking idea. Two funny things about this. 1. The Soviets were indeed doing a similar study that came to the same conclusion. 2. The reason it was declassified is because one of the scientists working on this project was Carl Sagan. Sagan accidentally leaked the documents of this project after using it as evidence of his previous work when applying for a job years after project ended. There's a declassified CIA document titled Soviet Jokes for the DDCI, presumably the deputy director, that just has a list of various political jokes about the USSR, similar to the ones Reagan would occasionally tell. The purpose of this list is unclear, but it's pretty weird. The Finder's cult documents. A crazy amount of info released by the FBI about a cult with CIA ties back during the 80s. They abducted or otherwise obtained children that they sexually abused and made participate in ostensibly satanic rituals. Repeatedly, evidence of child abuse or neglect was ignored, and testimony of FBI or customs agents being told to fuck off by CIA members are documented. The CIA did even admit to working with the cult, but only under the guise of computer training. The cult operated under the guise of one of those new age groups and suppositions that they were attempting to mold the kids into the what they thought was a better form were put forth. Swept under as just satanic panic, but was far from that. Thanks for watching and share your stories. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.